This is Swarfcast. I'm Noah Graff.
I am very honored to be with Terry Iverson, former president and owner of Iverson and Company, author, and the founder of Champion Now. Welcome to Swarfcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good seeing you, Noah.
It is good seeing you again. This is Terry's second time on the podcast. I think you were here, 4 years ago or something.
It was a while ago, for sure.
Yeah. You had just come out with your first book, and now you have a second book that you came out with a little bit ago. That's incredible. Something that maybe one day we'll see.
For sure.
So let's give everybody a little context. We are a bit from the same tribe. I, a used machinery dealer, you coming from a family business as well, selling new machinery mostly. So,
mostly new, and then more used as time went on.
All right. Well, you're a thought leader in manufacturing nowadays, but you have a lot of background, a lot of credibility. What led you up to this? And we'll do the condensed version because this is your life story. But give us the nitty gritty. You grew up in a family business, correct?
I did. It was third generation.
Third generation. So you guys distributed Hardinge, correct?
Yes. My grandfather, back in the 1920s, actually started working like sweeping floors for Hardinge. And they were in the city.
City of Chicago.
City of Chicago, yep. And so that was around 1925. And so in 1931, the Collett Company bought the machine company and moved them to Elmira, New York. So they wanted 3 people that worked there to go with, and my grandfather was one of them. And
so he went to New York?
He did not. He said, I can't. He was the breadwinner for all his brothers and sisters and his mom. Even though he wasn't the oldest, he was still the breadwinner. So
how many brothers and sisters did he have?
He had, I think there were six of them total, I believe.
People had a lot of kids back then.
Yeah, for sure. And his father, my great-grandfather, who came from Norway, had died in a scaffolding accident where he fell off a scaffold and was injured and then ultimately passed some time after that. So he became the breadwinner, and he told the people at Hardinge, he said, I can't pick everyone up and move to New York, but if you would allow me to represent you, I'd be honored to represent you here in the Midwest. So that's how it all started.
I got you. Okay. And then over time, your family had a little bit of ownership in Hardinge?
Well, because we were so early on, there was, Hardinge wasn't a public company. They're a private company. And there were stocks that we, gained, that my grandfather gained, and then my dad and my uncles, obtained, and then ultimately all the offspring. So my cousins had Hardinge stock. I had Hardinge stock. My brother and sister had Hardinge stock. Their sisters. And ultimately, at one point, the family as a whole owned about 10% of the company.
Wow. Okay. And so then you guys were the distributor for Hardinge in the Midwest?
Mm-hmm. Midwest, we also represented in Wisconsin, which is where I started my career, and then Northwest Indiana. So we had the Midwest.
And you were selling the machine tools, the lathes, mills.
Manual lathes, milling was later, but manual lathes initially, then automatic, and ultimately CNC, collets, with your...
And collets too.
Well, we did a lot of collet business, tremendous amount. My dad was a collet expert, as was I early on.
I always hear people complaining about how Hardinge collets cost the most.
They're probably the most expensive, but they're, without a doubt, probably one of the best collets in the world, if not the best collet in the world.
Yeah, no, I mean, I also believe that. I mean, there's a reason people will pay for it.
Right, exactly.
Okay. How long were you running your company? How long was that run? About 30, 40 years?
Well, 44 it's been this December, which I'm still doing some part-time work, but this December will be my end of my 44th year. And I started in Wisconsin in outside sales. And then it was around 85 that my dad asked me to come down to Chicago and get involved in, the office, the management. And so oddly enough, right as I came down, my dad became very ill, and he had colon cancer. And, he said, "Hey, I'm going to surgery and I don't know if I'll even make it out." And I said, "Okay, that's good to know, I guess." And, metaphorically, he said, "Here's the keys to the shop. It's your gig from here on." And at that time, I think 26. And so we talked about me having a title. And I said, I don't want a title. I said, I'm the son of the boss. You know what that's like. The son of the boss, you don't want to accentuate the fact that you're the son of the boss. You literally want to be one of them, one of everybody else.
Yeah. Boy, we could talk about this for a while. It is a weird
dynamic.
It's a weird dynamic. I'm not saying I'm not grateful for that dynamic to be, born into that privileged
opportunity. Yeah, for sure.
But as much as part of you feels like you're one of everybody, the gang, and
then you're not.
But you're not.
No, you're not.
You're not.
But you have to earn respect. And just as a young kid at 26 years old, making the decisions and running the company, I didn't need a title to, get in the way. And it was a good decision.
So did your dad die?
My dad passed about 3 years ago.
Oh, he didn't die in the surgery?
He did not.
Oh, okay. I was like on the edge of my seat. I didn't know. I thought you took it over at 26 and then you...
He got out of surgery and he said, "Look, I'm going to take a lot more time off. You're totally capable, and what you can't figure out, I'm here if you need me. You can just ask." And so he made it through. He lived way longer than he ever thought he would.
I'm so glad.
And he was literally a kind of a walking medical miracle, because he could not buy life insurance when I was born, and he had me when he was 22. So from 22 on, he couldn't have life insurance.
Because of the colon cancer?
Well, he had illnesses even before that. But ultimately, he did get life insurance, and he lived till 83 years old.
I guess they made a good decision selling life insurance to him.
Yeah, no, he was very thankful for being able to be on this earth as long as he was, as was I.
You worked in the family business. You worked with your dad.
I did.
Clearly, you had successful business. You and I prepared for this a little while ago, and one of the things you told me was how many hours a week that you worked running the family company. I won't say the family company. Running your business, you worked like, how long did you work? How much per day did you work, et cetera?
Technology is a great thing, but it also, for someone like myself that overdoes everything I do, as the third generation, you're known as the one that is statistically going to screw it up, right? And so I knew I was smart enough and I was hardworking enough to make sure that wasn't going to happen. Well, that being said, you can't with a company that lives and breathes sales. You don't know how far you're going to invest in time and effort to succeed. So you end up, overkilling everything. So 60 hours a week was a very common thing for me. And as you know, in a sales-driven company, you're paid for success. And yes, you can be paid, something, to be on staff and whatnot, but the meat and potatoes of succeeding in a sales company is what you're paid for succeeding for selling. And so, my wife often would kid me about, you're probably not making minimum wage until you sell something. And I laugh and tell her that that's not true. But case in point, for a long time, I put in hours that I never thought I'd be doing, but fortunately I enjoyed it. And in a management or ownership, more than management position in a small business, you have to fill any gaps that might come up. So when people are on vacation or when people are, quit and go to another career or another job, you have to fill in. And I'm sure it's the same with your company as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess we break it down differently, but so, okay. How many years ago was it that you wrote a book?
2018 is the first one.
2018. Okay, so you've been in this great business for decades, been taking care of your family. You clearly like it enough that you spend a zillion hours doing it. So what compelled you to write a book and do these other things?
Well, first of all, I feel that the opportunity I was given by my family, that I was very blessed to have that opportunity, first of all. And both my dad, my grandfather, and my uncles were very good at what they did.
And they worked in the business too? Your uncles too? And
One uncle did, but both uncles, the one that did work in the business left the business and started his own or bought his own machine shop. And then the other uncle didn't come into the business. He started his own machine shop from scratch. And so,
interesting.
So consequently, when we have all this success and all this opportunity for the family, which in another 4 or 5 months will celebrate 100 years in manufacturing.
Hardinge.
No, as a family, not necessarily.
Oh, as a family. Wow.
Hardinge was they celebrated
right in the 20s, you said.
1890 is when Hardinge started, the machine division at least. And so their 100th anniversary has, since passed. But because my grandfather started at Hardinge in manufacturing in 1925, 2025 will mark our family's 100 years in the industry.
Wow.
So, but to your point or to your question, that's the reason that I felt compelled to talk to young people about manufacturing careers, get involved in advisory boards, in a lot of different cases, both high school and technical college, and then ultimately decide to write something that would help the industry and help young people.
This was your way of giving back. This was your way of... Was it also just something that you found gave purpose to your life?
There's a little bit of that. I mentor a lot of young people and have mentored a lot of young people. And growing up with a single parent, because my parents split when I was about 6, I was mentored by a lot of people, and I felt my success had a lot to do with the mentors that I had.
So wait a second. Your parents split up. You worked with your dad. Did you live with your mom?
My parents split when I was...
Let's get personal.
That's all right. I'm a pretty open book, so that's not hard.
I know.
My parents split when I was 6, and so I moved to Florida, and my dad stayed here. And I do have a brother and a sister from my dad's second marriage, and I don't call them half-brother or half-sister. I call them my brother and my sister. But at the time, there was just my sister and I, obviously.
Okay, so you stayed in Chicago.
No, I moved to Florida.
With your father?
With my mother.
With your mother?
Yeah, my dad stayed here, and ultimately he got remarried years later and had 2 more children.
Okay.
And then my mom got married many times, remarried many times.
Well, they say the more times you get married, the more likely you get married again.
Probably. That's probably true. And I have a brother from my mom from a different father.
So, okay, so you grew up in living with your mother, and then you went to work for your father later.
Yes. See,
That's interesting.
Well, part of the arrangements back then is that I grew up in Florida. I went to school in Florida. And every Christmas and every other Christmas and every summer, I came up here. And so at 14, I started working for my dad part-time during the summer.
Okay.
For 3 months.
That's good. So you had a relationship with both.
I did. I was very lucky in that, albeit difficult, I was allowed to still spend time with both parents, but it came at a cost. I had to leave one to spend time with the other and vice versa.
I understand that. Okay, so back to the story.
Okay.
You've worked in this company a long time. Given everything you have, you've done well with it. But you felt compelled to do something else.
Almost an obligation. I felt obligated.
See, not to point everything at me. I have a podcast, so this is my chance. I wish I could say that was like the number one reason why we do today's machining world and Swarfcast as this cause. I feel like we're happy to be part of the movement and interview people like you and help facilitate things. But for us, we get purpose, but it's not like it feel like with you feel it in your heart.
I do.
I feel great about the idea of making a difference in people's lives, but you have like this deep in your heart, you want to change the complexion of manufacturing in the United States, correct?
Absolutely.
So do you have like a mission statement or something?
There's all sorts of things that I've said and can say, but one of the things that I came up with is changing perceptions one career at a time, changing manufacturing perceptions one career at a time. And so, but as far as a vision or a mission statement, I want to get back to the point where our culture in this country changes back to what we once had, and that people understand and appreciate how valuable manufacturing is, and how all the countries around the world, the ones that really do well, have manufacturing at its base, at the core. And it's responsible for the middle class. It's responsible for families being able to,
Right. You think about European countries like Switzerland and Germany.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Perfect.
Like those, I think, are good examples.
Perfect examples. I totally agree with you.
Where there's less of a negative stigma.
Less of a negative stigma. There's a lot of honor and a lot of admiration that the culture in Switzerland and Germany specifically, as you know, I talk a lot about those two cultures. And we, in the 80s, early 80s, when we went through, or at least when I went through, the first recession that I was a part of in 83, a lot of our culture started changing then. And there was rumbles and commentary about...
So you think it's the whole, like, Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, like...
I don't know. I think it was more of an economic wave that offshoring started to happen at that point.
Henry Kissinger.
Maybe. Apprenticeship programs were closing. High school programs were closing.
Yeah.
And then whoever came up with, and I'd love to know how this came about, that we were going to our country was going to be a service-based economy. I heard that, and I literally remember thinking, "Oh God, no, please, no, that can't be the case."
Why?
Well, when you look at the statistics, and historically, every major democracy or entity around the world that is successful economically has manufacturing as a priority and as a base. And if you look at it, that's what you'll find. And that's what has done a lot of things for our country in terms of our freedom, our lifestyle, our quality of life, prosperity. And so when I remember hearing that, I remember thinking, that's going to be a problem.
I think, I mean, I know I've heard people like in England, that's a big complaint. I think over there, they even did a better job of getting rid of all the I mean, look, there are some fans of our show who are in England. And so, but yeah, everybody blames Margaret Thatcher for getting rid of, trying to make it a service-based economy. And I think you look at what they're dealing with and it's no bueno. So
yeah,
I guess my question to you is, okay, I agree with you that various policies and got rid of manufacturing. It all went to China and other places. But do you see, it sounds like you have this idea of a golden age of manufacturing in the United States. Was there really this one window where this is the age that you have nostalgia for, like the 60s, the 50s, the 40s?
Well, I mean, yeah, we had a whole boom of manufacturing, during the war times. Let's,
Right.
back then, let's put it that way. And, there's
There was a lot of pride in it.
Absolutely. And I think making things in general and accomplishing things by making things, there's a lot of pride inherently to that.
Yeah.
And so, my uncle and I were talking, my one living uncle and I were talking less than a month ago. And he said, he says, Terry, I'm just taking up air right now. And he says, I'm at the age where I can't be productive anymore. And
How old is he?
He's 80, he's probably getting close to 85, 84, somewhere in there. And he says, I've been productive my whole life. And I'm like, I get it. I understand. And so as I move away from being productive at the shop, so to speak, and going towards what people might call retirement, I still feel that I have to be productive in a way that other people will benefit.
You're retiring from one business, but you're not retired. You're just doing something else.
Correct. And probably have as much passion for that as I did when I was with the company full time.
Do you think that you have more passion for this?
It's different. It's easier to have more passion. I'm not saying I have more passion because I was very passionate about the family business.
Why were you passionate about the family business?
Because, well, if you go back to my story, I lived apart for 9 months a year from 6 years to, until I was a grown man, from my father. So the opportunity to, play catch up, so to speak, and work with my dad and take that was when I started, it was year 50 for the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I helped, I didn't do it on my own. I helped get it to year 94. And I had some of our kids involved in the business, but it wasn't necessarily a match for them, which is fine. And fortunately, and hopefully it'll be around for another, 50 years since. But I felt that it was an opportunity to, work with my dad, learn the trade that the family has been so good at.
Yeah.
And be really good at something. And I almost didn't go into it. And then I woke up one day and I'm like, why am I being so moronic?
What would you have done?
Well, we talked before the podcast, we talked about, I have blessings skill-wise on engineering, but also on artistic side. So I had a lot of things that, I was very fascinated with photography. This is before computers came out, so it wasn't digital photography. And But, I was really good in math and science. And so was my dad, and so were my uncles, and so was my grandfather. And so, right when I first got married, when Kathy and I got married, I thought, why am I being so, short-sighted? Why am I not wanting to go into the family business?
And why didn't you?
And, my dad had very high standards, extremely. And I knew if I could make it through that I would become really good at what I would do.
Interesting.
But I wasn't sure that I could make it through. And
really?
Yeah, I wasn't sure that it was going to work very well.
You weren't sure if you were going to live up to what he wanted you to be. And this is before you were 26. This was when I was 21 or 22. I was 22 when I started working for him, and almost turned him down. And then I thought, you know what? You're being childish again. You're being silly. You owe it to your wife first to, see what she has to say. So I asked her, and she said, why wouldn't you work for your dad? And I'm like, and then I felt like I owed it to my grandfather too, because of the legacy. And so I, almost when he asked me, I was working for my uncle in Wisconsin. And when he asked me, I almost told him no, like right away. And, but yes, his standards were extremely high, and being wrong. as far as like what? Being there early or being...
Oh, all of the above. Being there early, staying late, being a master of studying your product and knowing it better than anybody else. So you couldn't just be an employee with my dad. You had to be the best employee. And so whether I was or I wasn't, I certainly put the time in to make sure that I was giving it my best. Let's put it that way.
Interesting.
But my wife said, if you don't like it, you can bow out because because it's not working out. And I never felt failure was not an option. It was not an option.
Well, what would leaving have been failure?
Might have been. Yeah, I can't. I didn't leave, so I didn't get to that point. But it could have been. For me, it might have been. Let's put it that way.
So now you're in another chapter.
Yeah,
of
for
your
sure.
life.
Latter chapter, but chapter.
How old are you?
65.
Man, you're just getting started.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but
I mean, you're only 20 years older than me, so it doesn't sound that old anymore.
Good point. Well, I'll go with that. I'll go with what you say.
We have a lot of interesting parallels and some big contrasts as to how things have gone. But at the same time, we are similar in that we've got one business, the treasure hunting business in my case of buying and selling iron, and your case also selling many of the same machines. But we both have different interests. But yours it's a big cause, which I think is awesome. I think that's the way to really have fire with it. Now that you're 65, but I mean, you started doing this stuff. I mean, you came out with your book 5 years ago. Were you doing
5 or 6? Yeah.
You were doing other stuff too before that, right?
Well, in the mid '90s, now's the time to bring Harry Mosier into it. The mid '90s, I met Harry. Well, Harry Mosier is the Reshoring Initiative, but he was the chairman of Charmy USA.
A.G. Charmy?
Yes, the EDM people.
Okay.
Yeah, a Swiss company, but they had a U.S. entity, and he was chairman. And so he approached me with Tim Doran. Tim Doran was one of his dealers. And he approached me about, Terry, we need to get more young people involved. And this was in the mid-'90s. And so I'm like, okay, I'm in. And so he gave me all the printed information about.
So you were in your 40s?
Yes. Yep. So I started talking at high schools and quickly learned that just wasn't adequate. If I'm going to invest this much time in something, that I really want to reach a broader audience.
When you talked to high schools, what did you say? What were you were encouraging careers in manufacturing?
Yes.
But you weren't manufacturing anything.
Correct.
That's where I always kind of come into this weird place where, like, I'm trying to appeal to an audience of manufacturers, and I don't manufacture anything. I mean, we refurbish machines, not me personally. So how do you, and this is still what you're doing now. I mean, you're encouraging a movement, and you're part of this world, but it's an interesting dynamic, huh?
Well, to be fair and accurate, we did a lot of processing and a lot of manufacturing for our customers.
That's right, because you guys would customize the collets.
Well, we would customize the collets, but we would also program and tool the CNC machine in new equipment. We've done it in used equipment also, but new equipment. So
all right, that's pretty different then.
Yeah, so I got really good at processing parts. My dad was good at processing components. Both of my uncles were exceptionally good at it, and so I got good at it as well. And that kind of really made me passionate about the manufacturing industry because I just enjoyed being able to apply and help my customers make their parts better, faster, more accurate, and I got really good at it.
That does give you an authority. All right, so in the 90s, you started going to schools. It wasn't, I don't know, satisfying you?
Just I coached travel soccer for 25 years. I was a soccer player. All my kids were soccer players.
You coached it for your kids?
I coached it for my kids
awesome.
On a travel basis. And it allowed me to do two things. One, when I was on the soccer field, I wasn't thinking about work. And every other time, I was thinking about work. So it was really a cool mechanism for me to, have a different interest. And I mentored a lot of young people.
But then after your kids were gone, you kept coaching soccer.
Technically, I got to the point where I helped start a soccer organization and served on their board. But my oldest started at age 5, and my youngest played up to U19. And when my oldest started at 5, he could practice on the team, but he couldn't play.
Okay, so you were coaching for 25 years for your kids.
Basically. But then I also helped found a soccer club and got to the point where I'm like, all right, it wasn't like it was a soccer league, a house league. It was at a very high level. Mm-hmm. And one of my last teams, a lot of the kids went and played Division III ball around the country. But that being said, when I quit travel soccer and I was starting to talk to young people about manufacturing, I basically took all the hours I was, coaching travel soccer and poured them into, what now is Champion Now.
You started this movement. You were on boards. You were getting involved in getting kids into manufacturing or encouraging young people.
I encourage young people. Harry had all the data, and he was really good at showing, how much money can be made by going into manufacturing. And one day I thought to myself, I'm like, Harry, it's great that, this reshoring movement is awesome.
What years are we talking?
Mid-90s, roughly. And I don't remember the exact date that Harry started the reshoring movement, but it was sometime after that. I said, but if you're bringing people back, from other countries to bring product back here, we need the people to make the product.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
which we're running into now.
and it was maybe not as severe as it is now, but it was an issue back then too. So then I started preaching to young people about the student summit at IMTS and getting them their schools to take a bus down to IMTS and learn about the manufacturing world. Mm-hmm. And then finally, probably around it was 2012 that I founded Champion Now, which has changed how American manufacturing is perceived in our nation. It's a extremely long acronym, which is comical in a way. But the word is awesome because there's such a dark stigma, and dingy stigma about manufacturing, and champion is almost the opposite in terms of the type of image or perception you have from the word, which is, I think, that's why I think the acronym's cool. But in 2012, I started the organization and just kind of initially just kept getting involved in TMA. I was involved in CTE out in Washington, D.C.
What is CTE?
Careers in Technical Education. And then it was an education foundation in D.C. And then FLATE is Florida Advanced Technical Education in Florida. I served on that National Visiting Committee for like 9 years. So in 2013, I'd start the organization in 2012, and I'm like, I'm on a plane on my way to Taiwan, and I'm like, I've met a lot of really cool people, and I've learned a lot of really cool stuff. It would just, be terrible to, take that to my grave, basically. And you can only give so much information to, one set of 20 young people at a time. So I'm like, I'm on a plane for 13 hours. I'm going to at least try to write some of this stuff down. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I literally typed for 13 hours.
And that was the beginning of the book?
The first book, yeah. I don't know that I really thought that it would become a book, because at the time I think I had 40,000 words. I'm like, nobody wants to hear just one person, Terry Iverson spout off about what he knows about manufacturing. That's boring. And if I wrote a book just about manufacturing, then the only people reading the book then are the people in manufacturing.
Right.
So what I did was, the title of the first book was Finding America's Greatest Champion. And, America's Greatest Champion, and the initial definition was manufacturing's our greatest champion because of so many things that it does for the country, for the families, for individuals. And that being said, that was in 2018. And then literally, I also made the point in the book about that there's not enough women, female gender in our industry. And so the subtitle...
Not to mention minorities.
Well, I'll get to that in a minute. The subtitle was Building Prosperity Through Manufacturing, Mentoring, and the Awesome Responsibility of Parenting. So that's the subtitle to the first book. So I took everything I'd learned about mentoring and the importance of it, plus what I learned being a parent. And so I brought those concepts into the book as well. And I felt that if we did a better job in parenting, if we did a better job of mentoring, that a lot of the problems that we're having in, the manufacturing space would be reconciled as well.
Right. It's a book directed at parents, teachers, try to encourage.
Well, parents, teachers, educators, and students, the first book. The second book came out in 2023. Once again, it has the word champion in it. Inspiring Champions in Advanced Manufacturing. And that is directed just to students and parents. And so
versus teachers.
Versus teachers in industry. Correct. And so it's a two-sided book with two covers.
I thought that was way cool. Do we have the book right here?
So it's a two-sided book. And
you came up with that idea?
I did. So it's a two-sided book, and the art design on the book was very grueling because I knew what I wanted, but trying to convey it to an artist was not easy. So
the light bulb with a dollar sign and
the light bulb and the dollar sign,
Wi-Fi.
it talks or speaks to the subtitle, and the subtitle is "Discover the Path to a Debt-Free Career." And so, if there was one message that I wanted to give to parents and students, is look, you can be successful and not have to go into debt, whether you're a parent or a student. And so the other side is the inverted image. Instead of a black background, it's a white background, and then it's the same artwork. But the light bulb is a $sign, and the light bulb itself, or the filament in the light bulb, is a $sign, and the light bulb itself is the discover point, and then of course debt-free is the $sign. Success, profit.
No, it's really cool that you have a part that's written for kids and written for adults. I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, kids are not going to pick up a book unless they're told to read it.
Correct. No, I get it for sure. So one of the things that I feel that we do in this country is, a lot of us are very fortunate that, we're able to make a decent wage and save money for the important things, i.e. our children, right? And so in this country, we try to send our kids off to college, and if we can pay for it, fine. If not, then these young people, God forbid, go into debt, which is a real dilemma. So one of the things that I try to point out is that there's a disconnect, and we as parents, we think we're doing the right thing by sending them off to college, which is a wonderfully.
I mean, statistics would show that people who go to college make more money in the end. But there's other statistics that show, there's a lot of people living at home without a job too.
Correct. So there's 2 points to be made. One is that when we send our child off to college, and let's just say we're fortunate and blessed enough to be able to pay for it.
Yeah, I have no idea how I'll be able to pay for my 2-year-old to go to college. It's crazy.
Well, first of all...
And I only have one.
First of all, I had three, and I have 8 grandchildren now. But first of all, what's good for one is not necessarily good for the other. I went to 5 different universities, and I was an AP student, and I hated school.
5?
Went to 5 different universities. I was bored.
Because you were on the soccer team and you kept getting kicked off?
No, I never.
Kept transferring?
Never got kicked off. Came close. Came close to be ineligible one time.
Oh, you did play soccer in college?
In high school I did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And a little bit in college, yes.
Where did you go?
As far as?
These 5 colleges.
I went to Florida State first, University of Wisconsin-Madison second.
Both huge party schools.
Yeah, we'll keep going.
That was where I went.
Where?
Madison.
Oh, it was a great school. It was a great school, and it was a big party school for sure. So was Florida State. So Florida State, University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Florida.
Party.
Getting worse.
So you went party, party, party.
I was a very social being, let's say that. The 4th school I went to was JU.
What's JU?
JU is where Artis Gilmore went back in the 70s.
The Bulls basketball player?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a small university in Jacksonville where
Most
I grew
of the
up.
people listening to this, well, some will. Some will know.
Some will remember Artis Gilmore.
Okay, go on.
But I almost went there initially to play soccer on a small scholarship. So I almost went there for that. And my dad said, look, don't make a decision on college based on playing ball. And so
where was the 5th one?
Marquette University, after I got married. So I went to 3 years of night school in mechanical engineering, which I really didn't want to be a mechanical engineer.
Why did you bounce around? Why? Is it because you kept dropping out because they were all party schools?
No. I made the grades. Not as I was more capable than what I.
Is that why you kept choosing those schools, because they were known to be very social, quote unquote?
Well, Florida State. My mom and dad went to Florida State.
All right, fair enough.
My mom was a cheerleader, and my dad initially went there for swimming for a scholarship. But my dad graduated from there, and my mom got married to my dad.
All right.
And so they both went there. The reason I went to Madison is I wanted to go into engineering. That's when I decided, all right, I'm good at math and science. I should go to engineering. So I went. It was either Purdue or Madison.
I didn't realize Madison. I mean, I knew Madison was good for engineering, but
So I decided I chose Madison over Purdue. Actually, almost made the soccer team.
just because it's got lakes and they make their own ice cream and you can drink at the Union, basically those reasons.
I tried out for the soccer team. They wanted me to play JV, and I told them I wasn't going to play JV as a junior. In retrospect, I probably should have, because I probably would have been pulled up on the varsity. But that's what had happened as a kid. But anyway, so went there summer and then fall episode. Went there summer and fall session. And then my wife, now my girlfriend at the time, she was at University of Florida. So I decided that Wisconsin's great and everything. I'm going to go back.
It's a lot of energy to go to a whole nother place. But so you have, an interesting perspective on college. You went there. You're not saying not to go to college, but
I'm not.
You're saying this is an interesting option.
What I'm saying is a couple things. Young people should not go into debt for college. I don't believe that.
So what if they really want to go to college and it's the only way?
If they're first they're
What if they can get into Harvard?
Then they should go. They should go if what they're going to get their degree in is going to give them the quality of life and the lifestyle that they want in terms of the profession, and they can get a job easily that pays what they feel that they want to how to conduct their life and their mission and their goals, then absolutely it's perfect.
So you only think that people should go if that can lead to a clear job afterward?
Well, it depends on their priorities. I mean, everybody has different priorities, right? That's theirs. They own that. What I disagree with is sending people off to figure it out on their own.
Really?
Even if I think in let's go back to Switzerland and Germany. In Switzerland and Germany, in their model, they ask young people early in life to figure out what they're passionate and skilled at doing.
Yeah.
Like 14, 15 years old.
And how does a 14 or 15-year-old know what they're meant to do?
Well, and in this country, internships are the answer. And I write a lot about that because you don't know what you are passionate about or what you're even good at unless you try it.
I think that's awesome. If you could get an internship when you're a teenager, yeah, that's like life-changing.
And if someone gets an internship in something and they say, I hate this, that's not a bad thing. You just saved yourself potentially 4 years of college studying something that you should never study.
Yeah, I agree with so much of what you're saying. And I think it's amazing what they do in Germany and Switzerland. That said, you get a job at a manufacturing shop in Germany, for instance, and you have a job for life, basically. They can't fire you.
It's very difficult, if not almost impossible to do, yes.
So when you decide to do something at 16, and you retire at 66, you're a different person at 66 than you are at 16.
Of course. Absolutely.
And I know we're deviating here, but I think one of the great things about the United States is that we're into different things, trying different things, job movement. I think the way they bring people into manufacturing is awesome, but I also think it's a whole nother way of thinking. It's something that'd be hard for most people here to get their head wrapped around, the idea of staying at one job doing one thing for 50 years.
Yeah, there's no question. But I think part of...
But it's interesting. I mean, it's something to be inspired and use as a guide for various ideas here.
I think the biggest takeaway that from the point I was mentioning is that we need to spend more time empowering our young people, our children, what are they really good about, or what are they really skilled at, what are they passionate about, and allowing them the freedom, whatever that means, to pursue something that they'll spend a lot of time doing and presumably enjoy and presumably do very well. And what I think we do as parents in this country, and you know, I'm guilty as anybody else, is I say, look, my wife and I said, look, go to college, figure it out. We'll pay for your college. We won't pay for grad school. That's on you. And what happens is one child probably was good for college, one child maybe not good for college, and another child something different. And so there is no,
or maybe they weren't ready to go to college.
Well, and maybe
like you.
Well, I was ready to go to college. I was extremely mature for my age. I was bored, and I didn't learn the way they taught. Not at all. And so, you know, I was an AP student, and I was not going to sit looking at a book, you know, hours and hours and hours a day. And so, you know, I got by and I did okay. Could have done way better. But, you know, I worked during high school, and as you probably could imagine already, I was very social in high school, and I played ball. So there was 4 elements in my objective and priorities in high school. Yeah. And I divvied up my time accordingly. But that being said, our children are all so different. Our children are different. Our grandchildren are all different. And so there's I don't think that one size fits all, because they have all different interests and talents.
Right. So the idea of this, if I understand correctly, is to give people a very interesting option.
Give them an option that isn't well known about, for starters. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people don't know that most manufacturing companies, first of all, that manufacturing still is done in this country, right? Everybody thinks, oh, everything's in China. Well, no, not everything is in China. You know, we used to make over 20% of the world's goods. Now we make, you know, under 20% of the world's goods.
And we need to start making it again, otherwise.
We do. And China makes over 20% of the world goods. But, you know, the pandemic taught us that, you know, buying things from, you know, certain things, especially from other countries, isn't a very sustainable model sometimes when it comes to medical supplies, like during the pandemic and so forth. But case in point, one of the data sets that I put in all the books is that if you took the U.S. manufacturing economy by itself, it's the 8th or 9th largest economy in the world.
Really? Just the manufacturing?
Just manufacturing. So when people say, you know, we don't do manufacturing in this country, and it's like, no, we do. We don't do as much as we used to. We still do way more than most any place on earth other than China. And we do. But that data set alone speaks volumes about, you know, how important manufacturing is in this country.
It's a really interesting statistic.
But the other thing that I kind of blame the media about is that a lot of times the media will, you know, statistics and numbers can be read a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah.
And everyone will.
Everybody's got their own data.
Yeah, and you know what? Most of the time they're right. It's how you interpret it.
No, not everybody's right.
Not everybody's right. That back in the day that I grew up, you know, it was facts were facts. They weren't, you know, skewed. But one of the things that the media talks about, Noah, is that, you know, the total employment in manufacturing in this country has continually gone down, and that's true. But on the other side of the coin, there's 2 facets to that, and that is automation is a necessary evil for us to be competitive in the world market. And so loading of machine tools and a variety of other facets that are really jobs that nobody really wants, you know, put a part in and push a button. Nobody wants to do that, and I agree with that. So the more automation that we have, employment is going to go down to some degree. But what also is going to happen is the complexity and the skill set needed for the more automated and sophisticated equipment is going to go up. So that being said, there are going to be more positions that become higher paying. And then when you get into the supply and demand, which is what we're dealing with now, is you're going to have this higher skilled positions that are going to end up paying more because of the supply and demand and the inability to find people to do the higher skilled positions.
I think that's true, but my afterthought of that is always like, what happens to the people who just aren't that sophisticated and the people who are good at sweeping the floors and that's their thing?
Sure. Yeah, and they have to be,
But I mean, they're going to be the ones left behind.
It's a very complicated discussion, to say the least. We haven't even brought in AI and all the different facets of that. But, for example, doctors, lawyers, and accountants are what most of our U.S. parents strive their children to be.
That's what my wife wants our kid to be, of course.
So let's carry that out. We'll start with lawyers because that's one of my favorites. We are the most litigious society in the world. Lawsuits, right or wrong, and we have more lawyers than per capita than any country in the world. So that being said, you can, is it the chicken or the egg? Are we more litigious because of the more lawyers? I don't know. But case in point, we have more legal professionals than we need. Let's put it that way. Okay. It's a good paying profession, no doubt about it. Takes a lot of education, for sure. Now let's go to doctors. The health field.
We don't have enough doctors.
Don't have enough doctors.
They make it hard to become a doctor, and they're stupid.
And when not only do they make it hard to become a doctor, but it's hard for the doctor and the medical practice, especially small independents, to make a good go of it. And the price of education to be a medical professional is absolutely insane, right? So that has its struggles. Let's go to accountants. Accountants, we need accountants. But with the whole offshoring situation, a lot of accounting was sent to India and to other, Far Eastern economies. So there's that. And now with AI, there's a lot of things that can be replicated by computers that introduces a whole nother element. So one of the things that I feel very passionate about is that we need to teach our young people to be critical thinkers and problem solvers. Yeah. And I don't know that we do that as well as we should. But in manufacturing, that is one of the key components to be really good at manufacturing, and that skill set is to be a critical thinker and a problem solver. And those people, no matter what venue that they're in, you don't even have to be in manufacturing, those people will be paid well, no matter what industry they're in.
What do you think is well?
I think there's a situation where young people, think, and there's a whole entitlement circumstance. Everyone has this barometer of $100,000, six-figure salary, or a wage, and you have to be.
It doesn't even have the same significance anymore. I mean, it's 100,000. It's like 80,000.
Yeah, as years go on, and the cost of living and the economy that we live in, things change for sure, right? But the one thing that isn't talked about in manufacturing is that there's a whole entrepreneur component that the sky's the limit because you can do your own thing, develop your own products, make your own parts, make your own products, and start your own company. And there's a lot of people in our industry individuals that have become good at what they do in manufacturing end up starting their own companies. And so that's an underappreciated component as well. So, yeah, but to come out, and here's the misnomer, I think, about education in general. It's not unusual to spend $250,000 on a college education. Well, coming out, you have to be sure that you can earn adequate capital to either pay it back or make that $250,000 education worth it. And so there's a lot of majors and careers that's not possible.
I know, and it's such a pity.
And so that's where I go back to the parenting component and say, look, every child's different. And if you want to spend $250,000 for your child so they can, make $35,000 to $60,000, and because that what makes them happy, then it's all good. It's all good. But that being said, as long as their lifestyle is in accordance with what their goals and aspirations and what makes them happy, that's the key. But for a young person to go out and spend $250,000, go into debt for a job that pays $50,000, and then they have to pay the debt back, that's why you have young people living at home with mom and dad. They have to pay off their loan. They literally can't buy a car, can't buy a home. If they get married, they got a real tall order ahead of them because they have this noose around their neck that's a student loan.
Yeah.
And so there's very few things, higher education, there's very few things that have gone up in cost as much as...
Oh, it's disgusting.
It's multiples instead of percentage points. And
they want
multiples.
Right. They want this luxury brand, artificial scarcity. They want to raise the price just so it raises their stature. It's unbelievable.
Well, in the other facet,
and everybody else is raising their price. So if they don't raise their price,
right? But there's endowments and there's
oh, totally.
These huge bankrolls. There's money in these institutions. But
and they're calling people asking for more money.
I totally agree. But the other case in point is, let's use me as an example. I went to 5 different colleges, never graduated. Okay? I finally said, I give. I'm tired of learning a way that isn't right for me. The hands-on was way better. I was in every top class I could take, I took. AP Physics, AP Calculus, Algebra, the whole 9 yards, advanced geometry, advanced English. But part of the point is that when you break the numbers down and you look at the percentage of people that go to college, that get a degree, and use that degree in their profession, you're only talking about 15% of the market.
Yeah.
85% of the market either have a degree and aren't using it, went to college but didn't graduate, or didn't go to college.
Yeah, I agree with most of that, but I also think that there's nothing wrong with going to college and getting a degree and then going and doing a different job. There's still there's contacts you've gotten, there's education you've gotten otherwise that's not in that degree. I mean, I think that's a bit tunnel vision. That said, I think the problem with the debt is you then have to think about how you're talking about thinking of, all right, what job am I going to get after this to help me pay the debt? It's got to be this thinking specifically about the ROI.
Exactly.
But still, you look at statistics, people who go to college overall make more money in the end than people who don't.
And let me be really clear. I'm not anti-education.
Right, I know you're anti one size fits all.
Yes.
That makes total sense.
Because no one child is the same as the other. The way people learn is different. The way things are taught are different. What people are passionate about is different, and what they're skilled at is different. So, if you want to go and be a psychology major and go into psychology, that was one thing that I thought I wanted. And then I realized, no, I don't want to do that. But to realize it at the end, that's what I'm anti.
But I mean, how many engineers go into business, and how many lawyers end up going into business? That's very typical.
So, and if you have the money and if you have the time and that's what you want, I'm all in. It's all good. It's a matter of not knowing what's possible or what's available, and then getting to understand the ROI at the end.
What I think might have been good for me, and look, things have turned out well, so I'm no regrets, right? But I remember graduating high school, and my dad, who's, a bit of he doesn't want to just do what everybody else does, So He's like, why don't you have you thought of taking a gap year? Have you, and of course I was like, hell no, I'm going to University of Wisconsin. I'm going to party. I want to do the college thing. I'm ready. But in retrospect, I think like they do in other countries where after high school you have to do civil service, or I think it might have been really good for me.
Well, I think the gap is absolutely a great concept, and I think your dad was.
And you shouldn't have to go to the military. If that works for you, fine. But we could do some kind of civil service AmeriCorps thing. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, and I think people. It's just a matter of a lot of parents said, well, I'm gonna. Not a lot. Some parents have said, I'll send my son or daughter to a community college and get their basic studies out of the way. And while they're doing that, that gives them the time to, maybe see what they like, what they don't like, maybe even live at home and save money, but then also have the ability to do internships and figure out, what they don't want to do, if nothing else. And what internship experience, was, I don't want to do that for sure. But the second or third internship, you may find something you're very passionate about.
Yeah. I've been listening to this book about Benjamin Franklin. And one thing, I don't know if you know, but he dropped out of school at age 10. He was really good in school. And his father had wanted him to be a clergy and go to Harvard. But at age 10, the father could already see that he was not clergy material.
Okay.
So first he was going to some school where they were learning cool Greek philosophy, that kind of stuff. And then his father pulled him out of that and sent him to something more technical, where they were learning from sewing to gardening but doing other interesting things. And then he had to leave that. His father's just no, I don't want you to do that. And in the end, what they say was it was the best thing that happened to him, because he went and started studying all this stuff on his own, and being blue collar, working in a printing press, and doing all these other things. And if he had been pigeonholed and gotten his privileged education, we may not be here sitting here with your American flag.
You got that right.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. All right. So give me the scoop on this camp you've started.
So in 2018, was it 2018? It's probably 2017. Somewhere in there. I did a camp down in Florida at a school, high school.
You did a camp, or you started a camp?
I did a camp. I actually picked up, I shipped a CNC machine down to Florida at my expense, set it up, programmed it, took a optical inspection system down with me, took a week off work, and spent time with 10 young people, high school young people, and taught them about manufacturing. And what I realized is, not including the hard costs, the cost of the machine tools, just the soft costs were about $10,000. And so when I was talking to the young people, I said, what do you think it cost me to have you, here today per person? And they were guessing, $10, $20. I said, no, it's about $1,000 per person. And they're like, oh my gosh. And I didn't expect them to know that or even guess that. But case in point, what it taught me is that that was not a sustainable role or path in terms of introducing manufacturing to young people. So what I decided is I saw some tabletop CNCs, CNC lathe, CNC mill, and I'm thinking, all right, now that's A, affordable, B, small, so portable, and
is this like a Hardinge or a Haas or a?
No, well, Haas does make tabletops, but this was a individual that was making out of Purdue, a veteran, that very sharp individual.
Okay, they were like custom made,
tabletop machines. So I decided to buy a couple of them and have them programmed, and we set up making pens. The lathe turns the top and bottom segment of the pen, and then the mill, we take pieces of wood and we mill out, almost like a router, mill out the wood for a top and bottom case for the pen, like a top and bottom cover. And so then I came up with a concept to take these out into the field to inspire middle school students. And it's not educational because it's not long enough to be educational. It's more inspirational and informative, introductory. And so what we do is IMEC is the MEP for Illinois. They decided to give me a little bit of money to do 5 camps. And so we ended up doing 6. And it's during about a 6-month period of time. And a camp is defined as a morning session and an afternoon. That's 2 camps. And so the design is that we have 6 different stations. One is lathe, one's a mill, CNC controlled, laser engraver, assembly station, inspection station, and then a programmable rotary station. What we do is every 15 minutes, we take 24 young people, divide them up into 6 groups, so there's only 4 per group. And then we have a mentoring component. I keep talking about mentoring. We have a high school CTE student.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So the high school student mentors the middle school students.
Have you ever encountered anything like that before?
I haven't, but, from writing books to doing camps to doing videos, I try to do things that I think are needed that other people aren't doing. And so that there's some, not requirement, but some need for it. And so the high school students come from the high school that the middle school feeds into. And so over the years, if a community continues to do this, the middle school students become the mentors later for the next group of middle school students.
Yeah.
And then the host can either be a technical college or a industry member. And so by hosting either a technical college or industry member, you have a path from middle school to high school to technical college to industry. So it's a total path.
And you've observed the people from the camp who were junior hires and
we just
got started.
We just got started, so there's very little track record. So we did the first 6 camps. So instead of 5, we did 6. And now IMEC has again come to me and said, look, keep doing this. We're going to fund you again to do this again. So case in point, the one thing that I left out is that every 24 young people that come, only 1 or 2 know anything about manufacturing.
How do you know that?
If you ask them when they first arrive, and we'll do more complicated and more detailed surveys, but when they arrive, we ask them how many know anything about manufacturing. And it's usually someone's mom or dad or uncle or aunt or whatever that will raise their hand. So less than 10%. At the end, you can tell just by the excitement that you see in what they're learning, because they go home with a pen with their name laser engraved on a plate in a box, and they get a shirt that has their school name on it, the high school that they attended, or the high school mentor came from, that they will attend, and with all these cool logos on the sleeves and on the back. And then they get all jacked up, excited. And there's at least 10 that go home all excited about manufacturing.
Just it plants a seed. That's
all it does. And so without something like this as a resource, they may, and there's a good chance that it is the case, they get home and mom and they say, well, what are you all excited about? Well, we learned about manufacturing. And then more times than not, the answer is, no, you're not gonna look at manufacturing. That's done overseas, and we used to do a lot.
I always, ask my wife about it, and she's just like, "There's no way he's going." I'm like, "What if he wants to be, start his own business? He's going to college."
So point being is if I send one of these, one of each book ahead of time, then the teacher will know that there's a data set, an inspirational set of stories to answer to said mom or dad, that says, no, that's not a possibility. And then the young person also has the ability to write about it, or I should say read about it, and then use that as a data set, and then have a conversation on whether that's right for that child or one of the other children. And now you get a lot of people considering manufacturing and parents saying, maybe this is good, adequate, or maybe this is a match for one child but not the other, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think that your approach of having a book and videos and, I think, look, let's be real here. Like, I don't have that much faith that as interesting as the kids are going to find the activities and working with the cool high schooler, they're going to go, look at this cool book, and it's going to end up on the bed. But the videos, and I've seen your videos, and they're pretty professional. I could see them being attractive. That said, my opinion of the book is like, I don't know, there's just a certain credibility you get from having a book and being an author, and like, I don't know, it just sort of legitimizes it because there's zillions of people with videos. Even though the videos are what people are going to watch, like, also you've got this one thing that they take home with them. Like, again, maybe they'll look at it a couple times, but they've taken it home with them. They'll think about it. They'll think about you. They'll think about this program. Maybe they'll read it, but if it causes them to go to the web and look at other stuff, what do they call that? Like the flywheel, where you have all the different. Then I get it.
Well, we have a YouTube page, and we have, as you noted, 22 educational videos on our YouTube page. But the other thing is I'm a big believer. I'm not the best reader. My attention span is too short. So I love to write, but I don't like to read. So I
only listen to books.
I designed the table of contents so that you can go to a certain story or a certain data set based on what you want to know.
That's smart.
And then I agree, because I learn way better watching and looking. I also put a QR code in 22 videos.
That's very clever. I don't read books too much, but listened to a lot of them. I don't know if other people are doing that, but that's really smart. How'd you get that idea?
Just an idea I had. I sit and think for hours on hours and hours. And what would the better answer is, that's what I would want. I would want to have the ability to say, look, I can't make it through this story. I'm just at my attention span. Let me look at a digital component of it so I can at least get something out of it because I think it's interesting.
Well, it's like what's on our business cards,
Well, what's interesting about the QR codes is the QR codes came out and then they were forgotten about and then they came back with a vengeance. It was really interesting because I was really early in on the QR codes, and then it just fell by the wayside. It was ahead of its time. And then I think it was the digital technology advance.
And the pandemic, too.
The pandemic and the phones advance. And then it came back, and now it's the way to do things is with QR codes.
Interesting.
I almost did QR codes in the first book, and I decided not to.
Was writing a book one of the hardest things you've done?
Oh, yeah, by far.
That's what everybody says. Did it scare the hell out of you?
As far as writing it?
Yeah, when you started, did it... I mean, I know you started it and you didn't exactly know you were going to do it, but I mean...
let me say this. I've had a lot of people ask me, should I write a book? And I say, look, I think you should write down whatever you have on your mind, whether that'll become a book or not. It's always good to put things down. I've always been a big believer in writing things down.
Me too.
I wrote an immense amount of letters when I was a kid before computers because people were important to me and relationships were important to me, and that's how I kept in touch with all the traveling that I did back and forth. But the one thing that I left out that I didn't say is you were talking about there's not enough people of color. And in this book, I made it a priority. The first book I made a priority of women in manufacturing, and we need more women. In this book, I made there needs to be more people of color in there.
So what does that mean when you say, I made it a priority that there needs to be more people of color? What does that mean?
Well, I tried to have at least a few stories in here about people that found their way, that were either Hispanic or black, that found their way to manufacturing, despite they couldn't see anybody else that looked like them in that industry.
Understood.
Drew Crow was in
Andrew Crow, yeah.
Andrew Crow. And Drew was in here, and he said it's on the cover page of the chapter. He said, Terry, if you go to St. Louis, certain components of St. Louis downtown, there's 85% black. But when you go into a manufacturing company, you may see a janitor or two that's black, but you won't see any machine operators.
That's interesting.
Anybody that's an owner, anybody that's a manager who looks like me. And so that
you go to the PMPA events, and you're lucky if there's one black person.
I can honestly say it is changing. I can honestly say that through my first 35 years for sure, I called on maybe 6 or 7 black people in the thousands of people that I dealt with. It's insane. And so,
did you self-publish?
I did. I went to a publisher. I worked with one company that helped me find what I call a developmental editor, because I wanted to ghostwrite it, because I said there's no way I'll have time. And everyone that I talked to that ghostwrites, they said, you can't write it. This is way too technical, and you're way too passionate about it to expect somebody to capture that.
No, you wouldn't. It wouldn't be what you wanted.
Right. It was definitely overwhelming, but telling stories.
Was the second one easier?
Second one was easier. The disconnect in our industry and in our country is first and foremost between the student and the parent. That's why this, and the fact that there's not enough discussion and learning of different career sets and what's right for each child. So that's what prompted me for this. If this is successful, I think the same thing needs to exist that I would write for industry and education, because those are the two disconnects.
Are you working on a new book?
I'm considering working on a new book. Right now, I'm focused on the camp, because I'm trying to get that up and going as a project. But I think if I wrote a third book, it would be a double-sided book for industry and education. And if we can close the gap between the student and the parent, and if we can close the gap between the industry member and the educators, then I feel I will have accomplished a lot in terms of what I tried to.
Wow. Interesting. What has been an important serendipitous moment in your life? It sounds like you've had a lot of them.
Got to think about that. That's an interesting one. Give me an example of what you've defined as a serendipitous moment in your life.
Often people and it's a really good one. Often people talk about meeting their spouse. I was in the right place at the right time. For me, it's sort of interesting because we were both on OkCupid, the dating app, at the same time.
Okay.
Okay. So, I have a love of filmmaking and production, and I think it's sort of germ that may have led to this podcast too.
Sure.
So my best friend and I, we were watching Back to the Future 3, and it's just, look, I love Back to the Future 1, but this is just the most ridiculous ending ever, just with this flying train at the end, the time-traveling train, and we thought to ourselves, I bet you if we tried, we could make something even worse.
Okay.
So in the next day, we got out the camcorder and we made Back to the Future 4, in which case it was beautiful because it was total, like, when you're a junior high kid or younger, you have total creative freedom. The scene would be whenever I'd go to the bathroom, I would flush the toilet, I would go through time, maybe go in the future, maybe go in the past, just go to a different dimension. And then my friend would transform into the main character then after that, because we're in junior high and we don't care. And it's just, this is the magic. So I am not, that's not my career today, but it's led to me making quite a few interesting things. And it did lead to me being coerced into working at today's machining world. That's an example for me, but what was one moment in your life, and it doesn't have to be the moment.
I think one of the things that pertaining to this, at least the subject matter, is that many times over the last 10 years, I've had moments that I almost felt were bigger than me, and the opportunity for me to have met the person that I've met as it pertains to, either the organization or the book writing. I'll meet somebody and I'll be like, that is just insanely ironic. And I've tried to push myself away from writing the book, from starting the organization, from doing the videos. And literally, anytime I get to that point, something, either a person comes in front of me or something, comes.
That is so interesting. It's like a tractor beam.
It's like a magnet is what it is.
Yeah.
And I find
it won't let you get away from this passion, this cause you have.
True.
Give me an example of one.
I went to a class at Harvard for a week, and it was a Harvard Business School, and it was very expensive, and it was like a strategic finance. And this is actually in my first book. And it was a strategic finance. And I was having a tough time being the only sibling in our family to work at the company. My sister didn't work at the company. My other sister, would help out on occasions. And my brother came in, but then found his way to another company that was also owned by the family. And I was having a tough time. And it might have even been before he even came into the company. And I was really struggling. And I met a woman from Brazil that, literally kind of said, get over yourself. And I'm like, what? I don't even know you. What are you talking? She's like, going into your family business and being the chosen one to take it into the future is an honor. Like, quit whining and get over yourself and just.
I've had some times like that too.
Just accept your destiny and just do what you've been destined to do. And I was just like so taken back and her candor and her frankness. And I was just like, well, obviously I needed that. And that was at year probably 20 something. And I made it to year 44.
Did she live in Brazil at the time, or had she moved to the United States?
She lived, when I went to this class at Harvard, which I was unbelievably thankful that I had the chance to do. Not only was the subject matter off the charts.
How old were you?
Interesting. Well, it was probably Oh, I should remember the year it was. I was probably in my late 30s, early 40s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, but was so interesting about the subject matter and that people wanted to hear what I had to say, which I thought was pretty bizarre. And I had, cause I didn't feel like I had enough value to, all these smart people I was next to in front of, but I obviously wanted to hear what they had to say. But the people that you met and all the stories and all the different, I'm a people person anyway, I just felt was just an unbelievable opportunity to begin with. But then just for that one moment to meet that one young lady that was in the family business that basically called me out on.
She was in her own family business.
Yeah. And she didn't feel the way I was feeling. And keep in mind, I'd been doing something for 20 years already. And was really struggling with, do I just continue this? And that's, I needed, it was serendipitous.
Yeah.
That she was at that class, and not only was she at that class, but she chose to speak to me.
Yeah. And you were in the right mindset to receive it.
I'm always open.
That's why it happened, because you were ready.
Yeah. Well, I was really searching, do I stay with the family business? I would have had a really tough time.
What would you have done if you had left the family business?
I probably would have started probably a machining business.
Oh, really? You would have done in production?
Yeah. I probably would have, done what my uncles had done, because I knew what I knew and I knew what they knew, and I knew that I was good at it. And I just chose to, go the family route, even though I think I could have made more money outside of the family business. That money's never been, I didn't grow up with a lot in terms of money. So money's never really been that important to me. As long as you have enough to do what you want, whatever your needs may be, having a purpose and doing things that matter has always been important to me. The thousands of hours that I coach kids in travel soccer and teach them more than just soccer, more about being a good person, being a good adult, being responsible, being compassionate, being accountable. That's a big one. Those, they can't pay you enough money for the satisfaction that you get out of helping mold a young person.
Yeah.
Which is part of being a parent too, obviously.
Yes. Well, I've found it rewarding so far. He's less than 2.5. Thank you, Terry. This was so much fun. We are kindred spirits in many ways, and I always love talking to you.
I always love talking to you, and I appreciate the opportunity for you to want to talk to me and want to hear what I'm doing.